speak. I just wanted to put out there that they're not saying the scripture is canonized or corrupted. I'm just saying it's retold, and we do fall short. And almost every story and major character was retold from Samaria and Egypt. And these stories were retold over and over. So go about the Bible. But the good news is that we've had a lot of Christ and Messiahs, and there is a grail, and we are a part of the inheritance. And there was a guy named Yeshua who did represent our deliverance. We were anointed. We were trying. They were.
Well, you're vomiting all this stuff out, and it's like none of that. How do you know that there's many Messiahs? Where are you getting this?
There's been more than one Messiah in different religions.
Well, hold on. Where are you getting this?
You have to read scripture all over the world, but
I'm familiar with world religions, but the fact that a lot of world religions claim to have different divine teachers does not mean that they all have, quote, messiahs. Messiah is a specific terminology according to Hebrew theology.
I know what you're saying, but what I'm trying to tell you is there's been more that's been sent to us.
And I'm asking you for justification for this. You're just saying it.
No, I'm saying that there's been more.
Where is the evidence of messiahs? Where is the evidence of messiahs outside of ancient Hebrew theology? It's a messianic Hebrew term.
Like the Buddha, for example. Same type.
How is the Buddha a messiah when the Messiah has a Hebrew context?
You're going to split hairs about men's terms, Jay. I'm talking about the God story right now.
You're assuming this is all one story, and I'm asking you to justify the claims, and I picked your first claim, and now you're saying that, I'm just haggling on words. You said there's many messiahs, so therefore your argument hinges on there actually being, in fact, many messiahs in other religions, right?
Sort of, yeah, kind. I mean, you're talking about people who deliver, like, overpointed lords, people who were given to us. We fall short, bro. We don't come close to that whole. What
does we fall short have anything to do with the argument you're making about there being many messiahs in many religions?
Okay, that's the good news. That's the only good news about religion, man. Is that
how do you know this?
Somebody who was
you keep saying this.
Direction.
You keep saying this. I want to know how you know this to be the case. What is your argument for that?
Back to the Old Testament when you talk about.
What is your argument for that? Saying it goes back to the Old Testament is not an argument. What is your argument for that? Because the Old Testament is not Hinduism. It's not Buddhism.
Stories are retold from ancient Egypt. They come from the Hoteps.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
And the flood story was written more than once in different religions. There have been other.
That doesn't. Yeah. Do you understand what the word concept fallacy is? So the fact that there's a common story does not mean that there is a single pagan religion that's not. I mean, how do you know that it's not the? How do you know that it's not the biblical story that is the origin?
Because there's stories that predate that way back before we even.
You don't know that. No, it says who?
I do.
How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that?
That's what we're debating.
I want to know how you know that.
Okay, so look at the flood story. They say it came from this guy Noah.
How do you know that the flood story that's in Genesis is predated by these other accounts? How do you know that?
Because there's stuff written about the flood before the Bible was.
How do you know? I'm asking you how you know that. I don't want you to restate that it is the case. What is the evidence or the proof that it is?
I'm just trying to explain something. You just refuse.
What is the argument that those are older?
Mathematics.
How does math tell you that those are older?
So I don't need you to.
Math tells you.
With your Catholic nonsense, Jay.
Catholic, yeah. So you don't have an argument. You just melted down.
I'm talking about an opinion, bro.
You just said math. That's not an argument.
For a second, Jay.
Give an argument. Give an argument.
About is predated stories that are retold.
What is the argument it predates?
They gave us our calendar.
What is the argument it predates? I don't want you to tell me. Do you know what an argument is?
You're talking about Gilgamesh and the flood. That predates 4,000 years.
Says who and what? Says who and what is your argument that it predates it? That's my question to you.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are way younger than the Gilgamesh story.
Dead Sea Scrolls, nothing to do with what we're talking about. What is the argument?
The original Old Testament.
If you don't hush, you don't know, where is the original Old Testament? You're just spouting a bunch of zeitgeist. You're spouting zeitgeist nonsense.
So stop talking and let me talk for a second.
You're not giving arguments.
Stop talking, Jay.
The
God story.
You're on my channel, dude.
Egypt. Stop fucking talking for a second.
Listen to this guy. Mental illness meltdown. Mental illness meltdown. You don't cuss me out on my channel. Get out of here, New Age goober. The God story, bro.
He's a
The
great
God
argument
story, bro.
against New Age itself.
There you go. So so total incoherence, total nonsense. Can't give a coherent argument. Let the dude speak. The dude definitely spoke, but listen, this is what people get mad in the chat when this happens. I'm not going to let you make a claim and machine gun past the claim without backing up the claim. It's not about letting him speak. I let him speak. He made a claim that there's a common Messiah amongst religions. Messiah means the anointed one in ancient Hebrew theology. Where is this in the other religions? He then said Buddhism has a Messiah. No, it doesn't. Buddhism doesn't have a Messiah. And so he wanted to go past that, machine gunning into a ton of other topics. That's not how debate works. I want you to argue and back up each of the claims that you're making. And he can't do that. He melts down, starts cussing me out. So, no, I'm not going to let him speak. As I explained at the beginning, when you come on, you can speak and say whatever arguments you want, but they have to be arguments. That's not a claim. That's an argument. A claim is one thing. His claim. There's Old Testament religion that's common to all the other religions about a Messiah. That's a claim. I asked him to give evidence for or back up that claim. How does he know that to be the case? He says, the God story, bro. That's not an argument. That's an amorphous, I don't know what. The God story, bro. That's not an argument. Then he says, the story of the flood. Okay, now he's shifting over to another. Let's talk about the flood. I want to know how you know. Maybe it is the case, bro. Maybe it is the case that the Gilgamesh epic story is in fact, quote, older than what's in Genesis. But I want to know your argument for that claim. And no, I'm not going to let you just run roughshod with the claims without making an argument for them. Because I can already tell, don't you think I've had debates with zeitgeist bros 1,000 times over the last 20 years? Don't you think I already know the line of argument of we're the Grail bros or whatever nonsense he's talking about? Just typical New Age gibberish, which is never actually made into a coherent argument. I'm not just talking over a person. I'm asking for specific arguments. And what did he say? Because math. That is not an argument. You cannot appeal to because math. Because math doesn't prove anything. Oh, he wants to come back. Okay, let's see this. Do you want to have a discussion?
Yeah, let me at least answer the question. The Gilgamesh flood story, we can all agree, goes way back before we even had cuneiform, okay?
You've made this claim. I want to know the basis for why that is the case. I understand you think that. Maybe it's the case. What is the argument for that?
The whole Noah story was retold more than once in different religions. The whole
I want to know how you know those are older. You keep saying this.
Because I read it in Gilgamesh and I read it in...
How do you know it's older? I don't want to know that you read it. How do you know it's older?
Well, these people lived for 13,000 years. I mean,
okay, so now that's true. So you take the statement that people are 13,000 years old in the Gilgamesh epic as literally true.
I think that there was kings that lived a long time, thousands of years, yes, and that they were not us.
How does any of that tell you that it's older than the account of Genesis?
Because the account of Genesis is retold 3 times. It has all types of different stories.
Again, I've asked you to back up the claim, not to restate the claim 20 times. Maybe it is the case. What is the argument for that being the case? Do you understand? It's a simple request for evidence or proof or backing, not for you to keep restating it. Lily, what's up, Lily? Catholic nonsense. I'm not even a Roman Catholic. He doesn't even know who he's interacting with. I read Gilgamesh Epic. Okay, so the Gilgamesh Epic is literally true when it says 13,000-year-old giant kings. But the Bible's not true.